We're going to be joined now by the Republican strategist, John Jordan, to get his thoughts on things. John, good morning to you. Regardless of whether you are a fan of Donald Trump or not, it is a sad day in American history that a former US president has become a defendant.
It's unprecedented, and it is a very sad day. I think that there are some in America that truly, hate Trump so much that their sadness for America is eclipsed by their hatred of one man, and that's probably what saddens me most of all.
Okay, so what do you make of the case against him?
Well, I'm a lawyer, too, and I have to agree with some of your previous guests. This is a problematic case for the prosecution. They have to prove intent, they have to prove knowledge, and they have to prove that the underlying crime. And as you pointed out, the Federal Election Commission, the U.S. Attorney's Office, all declined to prosecute this based on federal law. Now, Alvin Bragg raised the issue of state election laws, but I read the text, and they're pretty much the same language as the federal laws. So you'd have to prove that Donald Trump chose to use this to influence an election, when in fact he can say, hey, regardless of the election, I was going to do this anyway for two reasons: protect my marriage, and because his contract with NBC had a morals clause in it, that he was doing that to make sure that there was nothing public and ugly out in the open with him that might give NBC an out on his TV contract. And that isn't a crime. It's only a crime if he intended to influence an election. And it's not clear that he did, that it's clear that he would have done it anyway.
Yeah, because it's worth pointing out that, the payment of hush money, it's not illegal in the United States. So, John, let's just spell it out here. It's not a crime. So let's just spell it out for our audience at home who might just be absolutely unaware of what the actual problem is here. So to be as simple as possible, $130,000 US was paid from Donald Trump's team to Michael Cohen 2 weeks before the 2016 election. Hush money to basically keep Stormy Daniels quiet. The DA is arguing that was falsely recorded as a legal fee. It wasn't a legal fee. It should have come as campaign finances, which is a misdemeanor in New York or under New York state law, but it's elevated to a felony because it was designed to influence a federal election. Is that about the crux of it?
Yeah, that's about it. There's one other important fact, and that is this was Trump paid for this out of his own pocket. He in no way used campaign funds. Now, there are campaign accounts where people donate to it and you're raising money. It's strictly regulated. He did not use campaign funds. It was only his own personal money. So you can argue I would have done this anyway to protect my marriage, my relationship with NBC, and that's why I paid for it out of my own pocket, not out of donations. Yeah. Now, Michael Edwards, John Edwards, who was the running mate to John Kerry, he had a child out of wedlock with a campaign staffer as a U.S. senator and paid for that with campaign money that other people had contributed to, and nothing happened to him. So there's a recent precedent here where you're seeing disparate treatment or different treatment for Donald Trump versus a Democrat.
It feels like it's going to be hard to make this one stick. And already, folks, if you've just joined us, there are 34 counts, but it's what's known as a Class E felony. Class A is the strongest, so Class E is the weakest. It feels like it'll be hard to make this one stick, John.
Yeah, I mean, even if it sticks, you're looking at a fine or something. I mean, it's not even nobody without criminal record is going to go to jail for this in New York. Although this is New York, we have this DA here, Alvin Bragg, who's made a career out of making felonies, downgrading felonies into misdemeanors, which is one of the reasons that New York is so lawless now. But now he's trying to make a misdemeanor into a felony because it's Donald Trump, when in fact, in all other cases involving public safety, prostitution even, drug sales in New York are now becoming misdemeanors. So it's justice for thee and not justice for thou kind of deal.
Well, okay, so it makes me wonder what's the point of all of this then? Because, I mean, you've got cases in Georgia at the moment, attempts to overturn the last election. You've got the Capitol riots at the moment, the case against him. Those two cases there seem far stronger than this one. So, again, back to the question, what's the point?
That's a great question. That's a great question. And let's talk about that because these are connected. And as an attorney, these cases, these other cases, it's hyped in the American media that they're much stronger, but they're really not. In Georgia, for example, they have to prove that just one conversation with the Secretary of State constitutes a crime. And that turns on how you construe language and what he said. And it's really hard to get to violation of Georgia statutes on that. Moreover, you had the forewoman, the grand jury forewoman from the Georgia case, kind of go on to every liberal network in the United States saying, oh, I really want to see him gotten because I don't like Donald Trump. I mean, she was a kind of a loony young lady that, maybe have been troubled. And she was all over TV. And that's a violation of Georgia law right there. So the Georgia law is not only weak, it's compromised by the conduct of the grand jury. And secondly, we had the J6 investigation with regard to the protests on Capitol Hill on January 6th. But even the January 6th commission, when they had no Republican representation, no cross-examination of witnesses, nothing. It was a one-party show, and they couldn't even provide a link between President Trump and the rioters.
So what does this do for his election campaign, John?
Well, right now it does two things. It's benefiting President Trump because even President Trump's enemies in the independent and even in the Republican Party are just saying this is just a bridge too far. This is a compromise in the American legal system in some Captain Ahab type, Herman Melville after to get the white whale or the orange-headed whale of President Trump. And that's just too much for many people to stomach. So you're seeing a sympathy eruption for President Trump here. Two, what's going to have is this is going to freeze the other candidates because this is taking up all the media oxygen. So at least for the time being, it's impossible for other candidates to really convey their messages.
Well, okay. Well, on that point, what does Ron DeSantis do?
Right now, what you got to do if I'm advising Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley is you ride this out. There's going to be an enormous burst of publicity here, and then it's going to go quiet, and then these cases become very boring. There's not a lot more TV moments left for many, many months here. It's all going to be dry motions that are filed in a courtroom and long periods of outright inactivity. So you just got to kind of, cheer on the American legal system, point out how this is unfair, and wait for some oxygen to come in.
Well, I mean, CNN reporting that the next in-person hearing is not until the 4th of December, John.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that'll be a law in motion hearing, probably on perhaps on a status hearing or a motion to dismiss, which tends to be very dry legalese. So there's not a lot of good TV drama here right now for a long period of time. And then other candidates will be able to get a word in edgewise at that point when the American media focuses on that.
So is this just going to bleed into the election?
Yeah, more than likely it's going to bleed into the election. There may be a motion to dismiss that's granted or partially granted between here and there, but this is going to kind of drag on at a low level of intensity for some period of time. The other cases, if the other cases were so strong, they would have been brought already, or they'd be, there just isn't a lot there. For example, the classified documents thing, they did a raid on Donald Trump's house, but they didn't do it on Joe Biden's house when he, as a senator, had classified documents, Mike Pence, and all kinds of other people, classified documents all over the world. So they can't really use that one either. So they had to go with this.
I got to get your comments on Anthony Scaramucci. He was speaking to our colleagues at Sky News in the UK a little bit earlier. He says that this is all going to be too much for Donald Trump. And of course, the mooch, he's a bit conflicted in this. Things didn't turn out so well for him in the end. But he says that Trump will find an excuse to back out of this contest, the election campaign. He'll fake an injury or something because he knows he's going to lose. What do you make of those comments?
I think that's unlikely. I mean, anything is possible, but I think it's unlikely. So many people were saying that this would happen before. The walls are closing in, that Trump wouldn't run for re-election even in 2020. So, there's a lot of bleached bones of dead prognostications about what President Trump will or won't do. And right now, there's just no evidence of that.